okay, I'm coming from a household where I did not see marriage growing up at all. So I have no, like my parents were divorced, so like at all. Yeah, mine were so well. Anything that I saw in movies was what I thought it was.
So 50% of all marriages end in divorce. Is Santa now part of the statistic?
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
Hey everybody, welcome to LED Live. I hope wherever you are, you're staying warm and you are having a wonderful holiday season. We're wishing you a great time together, that you are spending this time with us. We thank you for that. It's really been a neat year for us here at Little Light Studios. We have had a blessed year. So many things have just gone right for us this year that it's kind of neat to hear some stories like that in the midst of COVID and all this like calamity. Right. But you know, we got a new building this year. We raised funds for the building, and praise God, you guys have donated amazingly to us. And we were able to actually take care of the whole building. We're still doing a little bit of a donation appeal for actually outfitting out the studio. But I got a lot of thanks and a lot of praises this year. How about you guys?
Yeah, praise God.
Yeah? So when you think of the holiday season, what do you think of?
Family.
Family?
Traveling.
Gifts.
Traveling where, though? Just traveling
family.
Wherever. Okay, to see family. There you go.
I think of gifts.
Gifts.
Or I guess materialism, because this is like the best sales come around this time of year.
You know, it's funny, like speaking of that, you know, everybody tries to get the gifts before and everything's price hiked way high, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, after Christmas, everything falls. I have actually heard of people saying, you know what? I will give you money to the kids. I'll give you money to spend on Christmas. It'll be X. But if you wait till after Christmas, I'll double that. And I'll tell you what, all those kids all the time would always say, we'll wait till afterwards. We don't care.
Wow.
Yeah. That's good economics, too. I think that's a good lesson, isn't it?
That is delayed gratification, you know. So what do you think of when you think of the holiday season?
I think of grace.
Grace. Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Yeah. I have a Advent wreath on my table, and every day you put out a candle and it has a little baby Jesus. Well, it's actually Mary on a donkey, and it goes around the wreath until it gets to the center. And one year I used small candles and it burnt the mule's face when it got the donkey, when it got close to the center. So if you have one, don't do that. But I think that there's so much that can distract you in this season that the very reason for it is just lost. So it's like you kind of have to be really intentional about saying, this is what we're celebrating. You know, it's the grace of the Savior.
And really, it's about relationships, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys all mentioned that over Christmas time or over the holiday season, it's really about getting together with your family, right? And you mentioned Jesus's birth. I mean, that's really God coming down and spending time in amongst us, walking in amongst us. That's a relationship, right? And so I think the holiday season is definitely centering around that. People are genuinely looking forward to the holiday season with warm feelings. I know some people have very not warm feelings for whatever, you know, if there's a tragedy that happened or, you know, something that maybe would make this time of the year a little bit more difficult. So there are people that are not always looking forward or anticipating this time of the year. But generally speaking, I think most people look forward to it with warm feelings. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to play a commercial for you that I saw.
We have yet to see this, by the way.
Yeah, nobody in here has actually seen this commercial.
I'm really nervous.
And I really want to know your thoughts about this commercial because it was pretty interesting. It's not from this country. I want to mention that. But it was about this warm, fuzzy time of the year that we all seem to enjoy and look forward to. Here's the commercial. By the way, has anyone seen this commercial?
No.
Okay, awesome.
I already don't like that.
I think it's interesting that they're in a church.
This is a commercial?
This is a commercial.
This is a whole show.
Dude, that's creepy. But...
Det kommer tillbaka nästa år. Ja, alla bor i verkligen sant att det är tänk på det. Jag är fin. Jag kommer till att savna dig. Det är många som väntar på packen. En dag i år. Ett år till.
Oh, what? What's going on?
It's a commercial. Isn't this crazy?
Ja, det kommer någon podcast där. God jul!
Vi fick tag i lite assistans i år.
There's no
Så jag kommer
subtitles.
samman med dig.
Okay, so what he said right there was, I employed somebody else so I could have the time off, and I can now spend it with you.
Yeah. Sorry. Wow.
Like, what? Where did this come from?
What country is this? I'll
Norway.
wait till afterward.
So their attention span must be amazing if their commercials are like 1 minute and 30 seconds long.
Also, what are they advertising?
Okay, hold on. So what this says right here is that they have 50 years of being able to choose whom they want to love.
Oh.
Oh God, what?
Good you.
Oh.
It's basically saying like happy holidays, but we've had 50 years to be able to choose whom we want to love. Okay? So
What company is this?
what do you think?
That looks like the Postal Service or something.
I think, and this is like totally deviating from the obvious, but the thing that kind of strikes me is that's the message of the gospel, is God with us. And I know, there's the overt homosexuality that's portrayed, but to me, the fact that he was wanting the presence of Santa, not the gifts and the trimmings, but the presence and relationship, to me, I was just like, wow. I mean, that was really powerful. Of course, you didn't, I was kind of suspecting where that was going, but I think that accidentally is kind of the message of the gospel embedded in that.
Okay,
That's
so
not what they were trying
you're
to
bringing up a
preach.
good point. It's a postal service, by the way. That's what they were promoting. So it's like the United States Postal Office. This is Norway's postal service doing a commercial. So this is a government commercial
Wow.
saying that for 50 years, they have the freedom to love whom they want. Okay, great message, wouldn't you say? You can love who you want, right? Is that a good message?
Yeah, yes, it is. Wait.
So let me ask.
Hold on.
So let me ask
I
you a
was thinking
question. So let me ask you a question.
Only heard half of what he said. But then...
If I want
is a
to
trick.
love whomever I want, what if that love all of a sudden happens to a 12-year-old? Oh, wait a minute. But now there's a line. Do you see what I'm saying? there's an interesting thing that's happening here. They were putting this idea out during Christmas when everybody has these warm and fuzzy feelings, right? And this is not a discussion on homosexuality. I'm just pointing this out, that it's very interesting because there's a lot of dynamics here that a lot of people aren't thinking about when you're watching this. Where is Mrs. Santa?
Doesn't exist.
Dang, I didn't even think about her.
I mean, what about Mrs. Santa? Isn't
Mrs.
Santa
Claus.
Claus actually married?
Yeah.
Mrs.
she-
Claus.
We don't see her a lot, in all fairness, in a lot of things. He gets a lot more attention than she
That's
does.
true.
He does.
Yeah, but
He
you
does.
think of how many, like, at least in this country, how many holiday, you know, like at the mall or something, like how many people. I have a set of grandparents who used to do that. My grandma, she's passed away in the last couple of years, but she was married to a man who, both of them together, they just had the look. They almost got a gig at Disney. They had it down, and they would have little kids come to them if they were out in public, and the kids would come up and start like spilling like what they wanted for Christmas
Wow.
to them,
Just because they
just,
were like-
just because they looked the look.
Wow.
Well, they say everyone has a doppelganger.
So
Santa
it-
has a few.
you know, from that perspective, I'm looking at it like, you know, that was a package deal. You know, it's like, yeah, maybe she's not the most prominent figure, but it's still a part of the equation.
50 years seems like a really long time. I think even in this country, it's
Right.
like, what, 10, if that homosexual marriage has been legalized. Norway is a heavily secular place, right? So I find it interesting that they had, throughout the whole thing, it was like a religious song, and there was scenes within a church. So it's kind of that dual thing where they're glorifying the freedom to love and how progressive they are and more like secular, but at the same time they have this religious element.
Religious
So
setting, yeah.
it's like, I'm wondering who their audience is. Is it kind of, are they trying to cater to many different people by having all these different elements in there?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of an interesting thing because you saw in here, there was the relationship aspect. He's home with his family. He's home with his you know, loved ones, and he's longing to have this love that he sees coming and stuff like that. So it is playing upon an emotion that I think God has instilled in every single one of us. That's the desire to love and be loved.
Oh, you asked about Mrs. Claus. We didn't see the mother of his child either. Did you guys catch that?
I didn't see a child.
Either that,
Yeah,
or he,
the
either
girl-
that, or he was the uncle, or who.
Oh,
you know, it's hard.
okay.
It's hard
Yeah,
to
I think
probably
he was the
tell.
uncle.
I think he was just there with his family, but it's kind of an interesting thing that they're playing on, and I think that you know, this is not a discussion on homosexuality.
Okay.
This is not a discussion on even that. I'm just throwing the question out there. Like, really, honestly, there is a lot of kids who believe Santa is real when they're little, and they know that Santa is married. So playing this out there is, I think, really going to reinterpret that with children. I think it's children that are going to be more impacted by seeing something Santa Claus than an adult. Does that make sense?
And I think that's the point. It's about diversity and equality, yes? I mean, have you guys seen African-American Santa? I've seen one. That's not the norm, you know? So all these different types of Santas out there. I can hear the argument that's saying, oh, that won't distort the view of a child who's heterosexual. It's more for the homosexual child that we're doing this for, or whatever the case.
Yeah. But I think, once again, the argument stands that the more that we see it in public, the more that we see it in our setting, the more that it
normalized.
becomes acceptable and
Right.
normalized and stuff.
Right.
So this really kind of got me thinking about relationships, because the devil's number one attack is against a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. And so during the holidays, it's interesting because we have these relationships, and so I started looking at like divorce rates just around the world, because I just wanted to see this. You know, did Santa get a divorce? Like, what's up? Like, he's all of a sudden single. Like, you know, that information was not told to us. But I was curious about this, and so I found out some really interesting stuff. Where do you think is the least divorces in our country?
Somewhere in the Midwest.
You would say the Midwest. What would you say?
Maybe Alaska, because there's fewer people there.
Okay, I found this to be pretty shocking. Okay, you're almost wrong in that area.
Wow. So don't choose your answer.
Yeah.
I don't know. Am I allowed to say that?
Okay, so if you look at this graph right here, 9.5 is least.
So Hawaii.
14 is greatest. So you can match the colors. Where's the least divorces?
Where the sunshine is.
Oh, interesting. California and New York. Isn't that
Hawaii?
fascinating to me?
Hawaii, yeah.
Utah.
Yeah. Some of the most progressive, I would say liberal states
Has the least amount of...
But they
of
might have the
divorces.
least amount of marriages.
Right. That's
They
what
may
I'm
just be
thinking.
partners without marriage.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Who
So
has the most?
the most? Maine
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't even know people.
In Nevada.
and Nevada.
Where
Yeah,
people go to
probably
get
because of
married.
exactly. I mean,
Does
that's
anyone
probably
know
why the divorce
The
rate is
population
high.
of Maine.
I don't know.
I don't know. So I want to read to you a couple of statistics on marriage and stuff. I found it kind of interesting. Marriage and divorce, both common experiences for adults. About 90% of people in Western cultures get married by the age of 50. Did you know that? 90%. That's a lot, right?
Yeah, it is.
In the United States, about 50% of married couples divorce. 50%.
Mercy.
Okay, so 1 out of every 2 is not going to make it. We are the 6th highest divorce rate in the world, in the United States. I found that kind of interesting.
Wow.
6th highest. Subsequent marriages has even higher divorce rates. 60% of second marriages end up in divorce, and 73% of third marriages end up in divorce. And these are some kind of alarming statistics. But did you know that there is actually the divorce rate is going down? There's actually getting less divorces per capita of people than back in the 1990s. Did you know that?
Is that in relation
I've heard that.
to amount of marriages, though? People may be getting married less, and they might be living with
It
partners.
could be a fact. At least what I've heard is that people are waiting longer because you have. So the generation that had high divorce rates, or maybe where it was at its peak, those kids of those people took a step back and said, obviously this isn't working very well. And so a lot of them are delaying before they get married. So they're waiting more, they're getting more established in their career and their lives and their friendship circles, and really taking time to figure out what they want.
Yeah.
And so you're not seeing the divorce rates as high, at least not yet. I mean, that could always change over time, but
The divorce rate, average divorce age, I should say, is 30 years old. Couples are more likely to get divorced based on several factors. Couples married between the ages of 20 to 25 are 60% more likely to get a divorce. If you're able to make it older than 25, that decreases to 24%. And those with strong religious beliefs, only 14% less likely to get a divorce.
Wow.
You know what? I heard a statistic recently that talked about the divorce rate amongst religious people, and they said that those couples that actually prayed together stayed together, and that had a much higher percentage, and I thought that was kind of an interesting statistic. According to the U.S. Census Bureau survey, the top 3 reasons for divorce are incompatibility, infidelity, and money issues.
Oh, I thought money would be at the top, but okay.
yeah, that's changed.
Yeah, accordingly to the U.S. Census Bureau survey. So I don't know, unless people are not like telling the truth about their money, but those are the things that this census found to be the top 3 reasons. Incompatibility, and isn't it sad that God made us all diverse? And what a beautiful thing that we get to be diverse, and yet that's the one thing that just kind of rips us at the seams.
It's interesting, at my age, every adult I come across is asking that question, what's happening with you in your love life? But I've heard like 2 opposite views when it comes to the age to get married. Get married young and they have their reasons, and then get married older because it's not until like 27 and up that you really solidify who you are. So if you get married too young, you might in a few years get to know who this person really is, and then that incompatibility aspect comes up, and it is more fragile than just waiting to figure it out and then seeing who the person is. What do you guys think?
I suppose if you're judging it by the straight statistics, that waiting seems to have a better result down the road. That's just judging from that.
Right.
My suggestion is that God knows exactly who you need to be with.
This is true.
And so
when.
I don't know if that factored into this census at all, But I would say that if you are coming to God and saying, Lord, I give it to you, I'm in a relationship with you, and I'm going to allow you to choose that other person, I think your chances are going to be much greater. I know that is in my case. I would be divorced for sure with all the relationships that I had prior to my wife. It wasn't until I actually said, I don't want a girl anymore. I just want you, Lord. And then all of a sudden, he introduced me to my wife. So that's my suggestion to you. All right, so divorce rate in America, another interesting statistics that I came across that was kind of fascinating, and the reason why I'm talking about this in the first place, listen to some of these highlights that they found out. The current divorce rate is 2.9 persons in every 1,000. Now, it used to be 6 in every 1,000. So to me, that's kind of good news, right? That we're kind of sticking around, but I think it's for some of those reasons that you brought up. Maybe perhaps we are being more cautious with just not jumping into a relationship.
Right there.
Divorces amongst people age 50 plus is rising. So anyone over 50 years old, it's doubling.
Anyway, go ahead.
Why would you think that? I mean, don't you find it interesting that here in Santa and this other gentleman, that they're two older people finding this relationship? There's a lot of relationships where people get beyond the 50 years old and they're just like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore.
Well, I mean, you have the empty nest syndrome, I guess, and then also, isn't this around the time midlife crisis?
Could be.
But I know I've heard a lot of times, when you bring kids into the mix, a lot of couples kind of fall apart within that time because they don't get to know each other anymore. They stop going on dates and all that. And so if you guys don't communicate together within that time and get to know each other and have days where you don't talk about the kids or anything like that, then I can see why it would fall apart. The kids leave, you're like, who are you? How'd you change the last 50 years?
Look at the wisdom coming from somebody that's not even in a marriage relationship. You have to spend time in your relationships, right? You have to work on those relationships. It's like anything else, a plant. If you stop watering the plant or taking care of the plant, that plant's going to die. That same thing is going to happen to your marriage. You have to put the time in to continue to grow with each other, learn with each other, fall in love with each other. It's a daily experience. Wouldn't you say? I heard something really interesting about your marriage.
Uh-oh. You tell. I can't wait
I don't
to
know
hear.
if you want to tell, but Mikey was sharing with us a little bit before, just that you were able to wait for your husband, and that's just a beautiful thing. You don't hear about that very often.
Okay, about virginity. It's totally safe to say that.
Okay.
You're not going to make me awkward. Yes, and to be honest, that was my biggest fear. I thought I'm going to die a virgin at 19. I mean, I was more afraid of that probably than going to hell at that time. That just seemed like, the end of the world to me. But I did, a part of it was probably, if I'm honest, probably fear, because I had been raised in a very, very harsh religious environment where that was just like the unpardonable sin. But I think part of it was, even from the age of 12 and on, I saw the vulnerability of that, and I saw the way guys talked about girls in the locker room and how degraded something that's so intimate and so personal was just like sport. And I thought, wow, do you want to make yourself vulnerable to somebody that's going to talk about you like a sports score, And so that just really, made me back up quick from that. But I do think, though, that part of it is, I don't think we really understand the sexual aspect of covenant. I've seen this diagram, and it's really interesting, depicting the temple of Solomon versus the human body. And it was designed like the human body. And I think there's something that, Scripture calls us the temple of the Holy Spirit. I think there's something that we don't really grasp that is so weighty. And I think that's why there's such an attack on sexuality, because there's something about it that is so intimate and covenant making that when you distort that and you water it down and you disperse it, it weakens covenant and it weakens the spiritual aspect. And the devil knows that more than we do. We're kind of dumb and like, hey, it was really fun at the time. And we don't understand what was, the ramification of that and what God was really portraying through that.
There are so many life lessons in our physical world for us to understand these deep spiritual things. It is very interesting that in the Jewish sanctuary system, the only one that was allowed into the most holy place was the high priest. In your marriage situation, you as men, as the high priest, should be the only ones allowed into certain spaces with that. Yeah, there's a lot of crossover there that we can understand the deep spiritual things of God just looking at our physical relationships. And I think that's why the devil hates our physical relationships so bad. He wants to break us up, make you just go off in every which direction and chase your feelings and everything, and not really, understand our relationships are more than just, do I feel like I'm in love with this person? It's much more of an intellectual thing as well. I think our relationship with God is the same. So listen to this. The U.S. divorce rate is amongst one of the highest in the world. There are about 750,000 divorces in the U.S. each year. Most Americans who file for divorce do so between what months?
January and March.
Now, why do you think that is?
The IRS. I'm just kidding. Or March Madness.
You know what?
Men are spending all the time watching podcasts. I'm just
but don't you think that's
I don't know.
interesting?
Valentine's Day is in between that too.
Don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, all of that is really fascinating to me. That's something I didn't even think about.
There's
But
a time
cold
of
weather months.
regret and like trying to figure out your finances after blowing a bunch. The
And
year
it's
New
a
before.
Year's
New Year.
resolutions
Exactly.
right after the holidays.
And it's cold and
Exactly.
everybody's stuck inside together. You're like,
But yeah, everybody gets together and looks forward for this holiday. I'm going to be with my friends and family and this and that. And then the first thing they do in the next year, hit the ground running with like, I don't want this person anymore. I find that kind of interesting and fascinating. That's why this kind of commercial, when I first saw it, just really struck me. And it was like a stark thing of like, whoa. There's a lot of detail here that wasn't talked about. And I think like you get wrapped up in the emotion of what they're showing you instead of thinking through like, hey, they're actually portraying something that I don't believe is a good thing. Getting into the, without getting into a big discussion about Christmas and stuff like that. I mean, I've always thought Santa was married to Mrs. Santa.
I have a question. What do you think about, because obviously in America we can choose who we want to marry, but there are countries like India, some Middle Eastern cultures that they get into arranged marriages. How do you think that they would look at us? Because we look at them and say, oh man, you can't choose who you want to marry, but they likely end up staying married. I know there are other, like there's cultural things why you shouldn't get divorced either. But then like you have us where we can choose and we can't even stay married.
So I really honestly believe that if I've gone through all of these life experiences and all of a sudden my son is getting to the age where he is looking for a girl, and I feel like I have had quite a few experiences to where I could say, yeah, don't pick that one. You do this. I feel like my vantage point is at a different point than his. He hasn't had the life experience and all that kind of stuff, right? And so I could see how that would be a good thing if the parent is really looking for the child's well-being. Right. And so in the old ancient days, that should have been what was really making those marriages successful. Unfortunately, the human heart is wicked, right? Deceitful. And so I'm sure a lot of times that gets exploited. People want this person to marry your son because it makes a union of these two families. And
right.
You know what I mean? So there's probably all sorts of exterior things that would make that a difficult situation.
Right.
But here's some other details from this. The average length of the marriage in the U.S. is 8.2 years.
Wow.
That's not a lot.
That's very sobering.
It's not a lot of years. Praise God, I've gone past that. I'm celebrating 14 this next year.
I will be 25.
Wow, 25.
Quarter of a
You're
century.
not even that old.
I know. I've been married longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
How's that happen?
That's awesome.
A quarter of a century. That's crazy.
Praise God. Did you know that cohabiting can impact your risk of divorce?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because I believe that you have this open door, you're not married, and so if there's something I don't like about you, then I can get out of this easily. That's my take on that.
It is. And that's one of the factors that they've studied, that you're more inclined to move in with somebody that you wouldn't marry than to marry somebody that you wouldn't marry, because it is easier. It's just pack your stuff and move out. There's no attorneys and no, know.
Yeah, it's too easy.
I've seen a TED Talk about a lady who was talking about relationships, and she was even saying how Facebook or other social media platforms can become a little bit of a little black book. It's like a back door that keeps some relationships alive because, well, what if this doesn't work out? I need to have somebody in my back corner, that I can communicate with and start to pour my heart out to, or, meet up with someday if it just doesn't work. But if you go into a relationship with that thought, like, may not, it's probably not going to work, or it may not work, so I better prepare for exit strategy. It's like preparing for failure.
Yep. I think that marriage is difficult enough, and so if you leave any option on the table, chances are times are going to get rough. Every marriage has a rough time. Have you had a rough time?
Absolutely.
You had a rough time?
Yeah.
I've had a rough time. You guys going to have a rough time? Probably. But was it all worth it?
Yes.
Was it all worth it? It was all worth it. So I'm just throwing that out there to you guys. I don't want to scare you. Okay?
Yeah.
We had a couple tell us a long time ago. I remember them saying, you're going to get to about 10 years and it's going to start to get hard. And
It took up to 10 years.
That's
about
a
2 or 3
blessing.
months.
And
Wow.
it was like, okay. I didn't think much of that at the time, but I remembered it. And it turned out to be true for us. About the 10-year mark, somewhere in that 8 to 10 year range. It did get hard. We had 4 kids. One of them was a 2-year-old. There was very little time, to spend together. All the energy and focus is on the kids. And it was at that point where I remember, those whisperings come into your mind and you start thinking about it. I started thinking, it's like, man, like, what if it's going to keep going like this? Like, are we destined for divorce, And
Wow.
I pushed those thoughts out of my head because I knew they weren't from God. But they certainly came around. Those feelings of doubt started coming, and I couldn't imagine being with anybody else, or going through that process, or watching my kids go through that kind of pain. But the whisperings were there. It was a hard time. Now after that, it got better, but it was rough for a little bit.
But,
I think. Oh, go ahead.
But you just had doubt, right? It wasn't like you woke up one morning and said, "I don't like her anymore. I don't even think she's pretty."
No, It wasn't anything like that. It was just
Okay.
like you don't have time for each other. It was just like everything was all about the kids. And even now we talk about that. We're both excited because we've been married for 16 going on 17 years now.
Wow.
And we're excited because we're going to go back and visit family in Missouri, and we're going to go on a date. We haven't been on a real date in 2 years. It's hard. You get 4 kids in the mix. It's like, who's going to watch 4 kids for a sufficient amount of time for you to go and do something? It's rough, Maybe you can farm them out to different families and stuff. It's not like 1, 2 kids where it's a little bit easier. We don't have grandparents in the area.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have other family in the area. We have friends. We try not to, as we put it, burden them with 4 children, 2 of which are teenagers and can eat a lot.
Right.
But yeah, it has its moments where it's challenging. But yeah, we never had that experience where it's like, I don't love you anymore, or we don't care about each other. It's not that. But it's definitely something that's on my mind a lot. It's like, I love that lady,
Yeah.
and I want to pay attention to her. I want to make her life easier and great. But there's also a principle, because as we talk about this, I'm sitting here wondering, like, well, why do a lot of people want to get married? What are they expecting when they get married? There are preconceived notions that we have, right? We go into a marriage and we think it's going to be like this.
Is that because of the movies?
Probably. You know, it's warm,
lies. It's all lies.
warm fuzzies all the time. You know, you know, your intimacy is going to be like this or that, and you just have all these ideas like this is how it's going to be. Well, what if all of that wasn't like you thought it was, or isn't like you think? You know, what are you expecting to get out of the marriage? Are you expecting anything? Maybe, I'm not saying you shouldn't expect to get, or you shouldn't have any expectations, but marriage is not all about me. It's about the other person.
That's right.
And so if I go into the marriage thinking, what am I going to get out of this? Then it's going to mess up, you know, that beautiful experience. And there's a saying that I heard that says love is a principle. In other words, it's not the warm fuzzies. It's not this feeling that you get. It's not lust. It's not the intimacy part of it. Some of those things are part of the whole experience. But love is a principle. That means I love you because of who you are, because God loved me. And I'm going to continue loving you, even if things are hard, even if you know, we have a rough year, even if, you know, you wake up with a wrinkle or what have you. It's love is a principle. It keeps on loving. Look at us. The Bible says that God loved us while we were yet sinners. That's a principle. That's not it's God looking at like, man, you guys are so great. I just love you. You did so much for me and you're so beautiful. No, we're the ugliest thing in the universe. Right?
After Satan and his angels, I suppose.
Sure.
That's why I think the Bible talks about loving your wives as Christ loved the church. You know, it's like the church has not a good history of being good to God. In fact, they've had a terrible track record and they've constantly cheated on him and run away. But Christ was willing to see it through and die for them so that they would have something. So it was this other focused thing, and I think our marriages are equally the same.
Keith, I heard about what you were saying as well, and I heard it put that love is a choice that you make, not a feeling that you have. So it doesn't matter the circumstance. If you decide that this is the person that I'm committing myself to, it's a choice that you have to get up every morning and make.
And I think a real practical thing too is, well, there's going to be things that bother you in a marriage, right? Always. There's little things that just irk you. And if you focus on those little things will begin to grow into a mountain, right? Rather than, do you know, it's interesting that if you actually focus on the things that you like about that person or that you really enjoy that they do, those things grow into an appreciation in the same way that that other thing would grow into a mountain. Your love grows because you're sitting there focusing on, wow, this person is so unique and beautiful and does these amazing things. And if you let that be the focal point rather than tearing them down with what they're not doing or what they're not being or whatever, those kind of things that will just destroy your marriage from the inside out.
So I have a question.
Go for it.
I guess for the three married people in the room. So why should someone get married if it's so difficult?
Because it teaches you how to love someone else. I think that's the one thing that marriage is impacted me the most. It showed me that my world wasn't all just about me. Oh wow, there's this other person, that my choices affect this other person. And it's like this intimate relationship that no matter what I do, impacts that person. And so it just really teaches you to intimately have this appreciation and affection for others. That's what it's done for me.
Like with puppies?
Or adopted child. Like, let's say I'm a single mother
I'm joking.
of an adopted child.
And children, once again, bring another layer of complexity to that, or understanding about that.
Yeah.
Is here you now have these selfish little beings that come into your world that all of a sudden it's all about them. Feed me, please me, love
Change my
me,
diaper.
change my diapers, do all this work for me, and you're exhausted, running around thinking like, are you kidding me? If I would have known what I was getting into, I would have never had kids in the first place. But they're worth every ounce of energy you put into them. And I think the marriage is the same.
I would say, though, that I love being married and I love the best friend partner aspect of it. I think that just having somebody to share a movie with or a conversation with or tell about your day or when you're going through something, having somebody that has known you for 25 years, knows how, for example, a few years ago, I'm an empty nester. And I told my husband, I said, I'm revisiting the idea of going back and getting my degree in law, because that's back in the day I was going to be the district attorney. Wow. And he said, Deborah, I think that you would do so well with the litigation part. He said, but you know good and well, most of law is a lot of tedious, dreadful, sitting at a desk kind of stuff. He said, that's not you. And he knows me, so I was like, oh, you're right. So, but I think that there's something that's so precious, and I think that some of what makes marriage dreadful is we don't really understand what it was for. And I will just freely say, we usually come to marriage and to God. Well, not usually, we do for selfish reasons. There might be a few very unique souls who said, I want to lay down my life, be trampled on, give away all my money, go to work, stay up late, do all this stuff, and just take care of another human being. I am not that person. I think most people come because we do have these notions of what this is going to bring to me, and then we come to God for the same reason. We weren't just sitting out in our lawn chair thinking, I bet God needs a friend today. I think I'm just going to hang out with him. We're probably destitute and have done everything there is to do, and it didn't work. We're like, okay, maybe this is our last, card to play. And so I think that you learn and grow, and you make a lot of mistakes, and you do a lot of wrong stuff, and you misunderstand the meaning of marriage, and you're selfish with it, and you take it for granted. But in the midst of that, God's grace starts teaching you, this is a portrayal of Christ in the church. That's why we don't understand it in the natural. It doesn't make sense. I mean, animals do not pair up and stay together usually for their lifetime. They can have babies and everybody can survive, and they don't need to have a house and bills and all that. But there's something unique about humanity, that we are a portrayal in the world of, if I'm around Scotty and I see him just being super precious to his wife and just loving her and caring about her, I don't know, I may not know anything about the gospel. I'm like, wow, he is just so unconditionally loving her. And I don't know if he's like that or not, but I'm just saying. He's smiling like, of course. She's been watching me. But anyway, but it speaks something to people because it's not natural. Where it's natural for us to be selfish and do everything for us and demand everything for us. And when we see that, we're like, wow, what's making that guy do that? What's he getting out of it? So I think that that part of divorce comes from, we don't understand what marriage is. We really come into it seeking salvation, if we're honest. We think marriage is this redeeming, saving, come in on the white horse and swoop me up and take me away to my castle. And it's totally not that. And so I think that because we have this wrong expectation from the outset, like Keith was talking about, why are you getting married? If we don't understand that it's a covenant. You look at David and the friend, Jonathan. You look at David and Jonathan, and they obviously weren't a married couple, but they had this very unique and very close relationship, and they cut covenant with each other, and it was to the death, like, I'm going to be with you, take care of you, and shelter you. If you know the story of Marcus Luttrell, the sole survivor, he was one of the Navy SEALs that his whole team was shot, and he was taken in the Middle East by this group of people, and they have a word, and I don't know it, unfortunately, but it's this word that basically means almost something like covenant. And these people took him in, and they protected him with their own lives until the American people could be there. And so but some of the other cultures understand covenant more than we do. We're not from that. When Jesus came and walked the earth, and when he established marriage and all that, they understood that. We don't. We look at it contractually. As long as you please me, here's the terms of our agreement. When you quit pleasing me, I trade my 40 in for 220 is right around 50. And so I think that we don't even understand what we're getting into. And that's part of the problem. And I think that as believers, I'm going to wrap up my long tirade here, but as believers, and one thing that I'm still learning after all of the years I've been married is if we are not full of Christ when we get married and we come seeking and saving that person, we're going to constantly be disenchanted. We're never going to quit needing that source. I don't care how great your spouse is to you. We were designed to have a source from Christ alone. And when we misplace that and idolize another human being and say, you're my Jesus, you're going to meet all my needs, we automatically put the marriage in peril. We automatically put them in a position they can never fulfill. And so as long as you start off with the outset that God is my source and out of that I'm giving out, and I'm still learning that, then I think that you have a much better survival rate of your marriage because you understand what it is and isn't. It's not there to fulfill you. It's not there to meet all your needs, and it's not your source.
You bring up a really interesting point. When God created Adam, he could have easily made Adam and Eve at the same time.
And he did. He was just in his body. She was in his body.
Yes, but he created Adam and hung out with Adam.
Right.
And it's like he built this relationship with Adam and then said, I'm going to present to you your mate. And I think that's a lesson for us. Like, I think that we need to make that relationship with Christ first and foremost and realize that that's our true, real relationship. I mean, obviously, it's a union together. So it's not just Jesus, doesn't matter what you do, I'm just, focused on him.
Right.
But I think that's an interesting point that you brought up.
While you were talking about how someone viewing a couple together can be like their little glimpse of the gospel, it reminded me of this quote, and maybe you can help me out, Keith, if I remember it correctly. It's like people, or marriage and the family is a glimpse of heaven on earth. Is that correct?
Something like that.
And when you think about it, what it takes to get to heaven, you have to have that relationship with Jesus Christ. He needs to be at the center, and then having the fruits of the Spirit and all these things. If that's also applied in the marriage, how it can be a success.
I guess to answer your question, I'd say this. Before you get married, or before I got married, I seen myself a certain way. After I got married, I understood more what I was really like. And through that process, I see what God wants me to become. So through my wife, I see where I fall short in so many ways. And how what God wants to draw out in me and make me. She's been a person that I've observed over these, last almost 20 years we've known each other, and seen how giving and loving and selfless she is. And I've looked at that and I'm like, wow, like I am not like that, And I see that example and say, yeah, that's what God is calling me to do. He's calling me to be more selfless. So that's a major lesson I've learned through her. And I think with all of us, there's probably similar things. We see ourselves a certain way, and then we see what it is that we're actually not. We think we're all that, or we think we're something, and then God shows us what we're really like. And then he shows us, now this is what I want you to become.
So you go into it expecting to be a better person?
Yeah. Or to have your spouse tell you what's wrong with you.
Right.
Don't tell my wife that.
It just seems like, I don't know.
It's crazy. Like it's genuine fear is what it is. When you just the thought of, I have my heart and entrusting it to someone else, and they can literally do whatever, whether it's love my heart or shatter it to a million pieces.
Right.
But then I thought, yes, it is vulnerable. That's exactly what I'm experiencing and enjoying with Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Like he has given me his heart. He gave me his life.
That's right.
And it's completely my choice. And, he's being vulnerable with me, and he's asking me to do the same with someone else so I can experience just a little bit of what he's experiencing with me.
And many people trample on it. And so he has that risk as well of I'm going to get hurt, or I can get hurt if I give myself fully to this person like this. And that's also what happens in a marriage.
So how do you how do you individualize that? Because let's say, like, that's something that I've always struggled with, is my relationship with Jesus being, I guess I can say personal. Because let's say I decide, you know what, Jesus, I don't want your heart. Thanks for dying on the cross for me, but whatever, I'm done. I don't really want this. He still has like 2 billion other people that accept. You know what I'm saying? But then, like, if I were to get married and that person was like, nah, I don't like you anymore, then it's like, wow, like that was the one person who had my heart, who broke it. You know, I don't have like a bunch of other people, you know, like.
I think the same still applies, because God's got you, you know, he's got your back. And, you know, he just as you're saying, he has all these other people, he can provide, if it's his will, that other person to maybe take that place of the person who walked away.
Here's what I would say to that. I have 4 children. If one of them was like, you know what, I'm done with you, and I'm going to go do my own thing. You know, it's nice that, you know, you and mom got together and created me, but you know what, I'm just done, and I'm going to go do my own thing and now.
Yeah.
That would crush me. Now, I still have 3 other children who love me and care about me.
That's pretty good odds, you know, 75%.
But the one that came to me and said that,
yeah,
there would be a hole in my heart until they came back.
Like the prodigal son, waiting there.
But I would speak to that, because that's actually where I am right now, and God has got me meditating. It's Romans, I want to think 9, at the end of chapter 8 or chapter 9, where it talks about where Paul said, I'm persuaded that nothing can separate me from the love of God. Because whether you're never married or you're in a dating relationship or you've been married for years, the potential for that person to just gut you, destroy you, leave you, say you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, this other person's better, that vulnerability is always there. You know, and I think that with vulnerability and with that potential, fear can come into that place. And then when fear comes in, you can start to control, and you can start to obsess, and you can become dysfunctional in these ways, because you're trying so hard to prevent that pain. You're trying to prevent that loss, that now that I've experienced this, and if this was taken away, I would just be devastated, you know, wiped out on the street. And so even being married as long as I have, that is still a struggle in my life. And the last couple of days, God has just been like, I want you just meditating this day and night. Nothing can separate you from the love of God, because the truth is, there is that potential. Every one of us has been married for years. Our spouse could walk in and say, hey, I found this other person. Hey, you know, you're not. And as far as what Keith was saying, he may have never woken up and been like, I don't like you anymore. We have. There are days we do not like each other. We're like, why don't you just go out and golf for a few hours or whatever it is? But that's the grace of covenant. It's not based on our foolishness and our emotions. God help us if it was. There's a third party. It says a 3-fold cord is not easily broken. A 2-fold cord be broken in 2 minutes as soon as you quit pleasing me. But the covenant God says, even when y'all are acting crazy, I still got you. You're in the ark. You're not out in the waves. You're in the ark. And Noah, no matter what he did, if he fell down in the ark. He didn't fall out of it. You know, might have been some animal poo around him when he fell, but you know what I'm saying? He was protected. He was safe because he had entrusted himself in that ark. And I think that part of it is, we don't understand what God will provide in our marriage. There is protection on our marriages. There's a verse that says, if you as a believer defraud another believer by, you know, taking their spouse, God will avenge that. I don't know what that verse means, and I've never had anybody else know and interpret it, but it blatantly says God will avenge that. There's something about covenant. When he broke covenant with Abraham and different people in the Bible, it was to the death. You don't mess with covenant. And when we trifle with that, we don't really understand it. But when we enter in and say, I'm treating this marriage as covenant, God will say, I'm going to war for you. It's not about you. Somebody touches covenant, I'm going to be there, because covenant is his idea. It's not ours. Right. We can't protect it. We can't defend it. But all that to say, the deeper security is that there's something deeper that holds you if that happened to you, that your heart is not just for naught and you didn't matter and you're thrown away and that person can destroy you and move on and you're just in ashes. You know, the fact is Paul never got married as far as we know, and he went through all this crazy stuff, but he had a source that wasn't human that he could say. I don't know if the married people said that, you know. He said, I'm persuaded that nothing can separate me from the love of God. For me, I'd rather have that if I had to choose. I'd rather have that deeper, greater, nothing can separate me from the love of God than a temporary fleeting, because eventually one of your spouses is just going to die, even if they loved you till they died, you know. And so I think that takes away that fear of, I've already got what I need. I'm just asking God to give me somebody to share it with me. It says that we, as spouses, are heirs together of the grace of life. We're not supposed to be life support for each other. We're supposed to be sharing something together that we each have equally. So if one of us is gone, you still have your portion of it.
Wow. Yeah.
There's a Bible verse that says that there is no fear in love, and that perfect love casts out fear.
1 John
Because
4.
fear has torment.
1 John
That's right.
Good girl.
4:8.
So I want to wrap this up with just kind of a little bit of inspiration. Like, you guys have been listening to us talk about, well, you guys have been talking to, hearing us talk about some of the triumphs and the struggles in marriage and things like this. But there is I think a direct link with if we're having bad teachers of marriages, that's got to have an impact upon our life, right?
That's right.
So, you know me, I'm always like, okay, what's the media teaching our society, right? So I just looked up something, the 20 top most grossing romance movies of all time. We're gonna go
Money,
through this.
Inc.
We're gonna go through this list a little bit.
Let's see if I watched them.
Okay, let's see. Let's see, because you may have a fear of marriage that is unnaturally placed inside of you. I'm just throwing that out there, okay? So what do you think is on this list? Just give me a couple.
The Notebook.
Okay.
Yeah,
War of the Roses. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Has any of y'all seen that? It's a horrible movie. I was just joking.
Okay, so I guess we won't call you guys out and
Romance.
see which movie you have seen. Number 20 on the list was What Women Want.
Never seen.
Nope.
I've probably seen that a long time
He
ago.
can hear women's thoughts.
He can hear women's thoughts and
Okay,
stuff
I
like
did
that.
see
Wow.
that.
So
yeah.
he thinks he's the greatest gift to, and then he basically exploits the woman's because he can hear her, what she's saying to try and win her. 19,
That's
50
on that
Shades
list?
Darker is the
Are you serious?
19th highest grossing romance.
I never could bring
Can I-
myself to watch it.
Can I point out something here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Define
observation.
romance.
Okay.
Define romance.
This could, I'm not saying it is, but I think it could be. When children are young, they are taught over and over and over and over again through cartoons this principle that we should get rid of the rules, that there are no more rules. It makes one wonder, given time, if you take it to its end conclusion, where do you wind up?
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is their movie poster. I just
No more
pulled it.
rules.
No more rules at all, and everything goes out the window. There has to be rules. That's why I talked about it at the beginning. You can't make a statement saying we're celebrating 50 years of being able to love whomever we want. Doesn't matter age, nothing, gender, nothing. There's a line there. God has a line. There has to be a line. It is not fair for an adult to take advantage of a child. That's not okay. And so this is kind of one of those things where you can't say no more rules. There are rules in human sexuality. You break those rules, it's a bad road. And this is a sad, sad movie.
And this is what, the second or third one? Because it was 50 Shades of Grey. 50
Okay.
I thought that
So
was
we're
the
getting
third.
to that. We're
Yes.
getting
I
to
don't
that.
remember.
Okay.
I've never seen
Twilight
that
was
either.
on there.
I thought
Oh,
you never
my.
seen the series.
I always
Wow.
thought whoever read this book could read the Bible, because that book was
It's long.
thick.
Yeah.
I
It
found
was
this
so
series
thick.
so depressing.
Okay, so I just want to point something out, not to get too lengthy on this, but she's holding an apple, trying to
Yes.
give it to the man.
Yes.
This is not my poster. This is their poster. But just
Why is it always an apple? We don't even know what the fruit was.
I would not risk my life for an apple.
The
It is
apple
not
gets
that
a bad
great.
rap. It's
Okay.
a fruit we don't even have anymore.
okay. But I want you to notice something.
He's trying to pull us
I
back.
have
I want
seen
you to know
this one,
something.
I think. Yeah.
Okay, so this was a whole series, right?
Yep.
Terrible series. They're not in any sort of functionable relationships. These are terrible relationships. Do you notice a trend that I'm going through here?
Yes.
Yeah.
These are the highest grossing romance movies of all time. I don't know about this one. Never
That's
saw
with Lady Gaga. I'm sure you've heard the song.
Yeah. In the shadows or whatever.
Yeah. In
Something
the
like
in the
that.
shallow or shallow. It's called
Shallows, yeah.
Shallow. Yeah, that's a very popular song.
Okay, so I don't know anything about that one. This one, I really don't know that much
Yeah,
about
these
either.
are the new ones.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling, these are new.
You know, Dirty
Pearl Harbor.
Dancing and stuff like that.
Okay,
from the 80s.
so I want to mention something. Did you guys see Pearl Harbor?
I did.
Okay,
I
did you
think
see
I
Pearl
did.
I
Harbor?
think
Yeah.
a
Pearl
long
Harbor?
time
Did.
ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Tragic romance.
Yeah, this girl's in love with this guy. She falls in love with this guy. Now she has to choose between these guys.
Well, this guy was missing in action. She thought he was dead.
Still, it's
So the-
I
problematic.
know.
The
It's
original-
still
It's
love
problematic.
triangle. I know. It's still horrible and tragic.
So this is the original Bachelorette.
Okay, yes.
Actually had a different ending for Japanese
How about this one?
audiences.
I've seen that one.
Okay, romance, prostitute, rich guy, they fall in love.
Yeah,
Okay, ghost.
Oh
I've seen
no.
that one.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
She said, "Oh no."
Very interesting. Very interesting that it really centered on the state of the dead. And at the top of the poster, notice that it says is believe. I'll just leave it on that. Cinderella. This was another one that was on the list. Mermaid. Haven't heard of this one.
that.
No, some Asian one. Here's 50 Shades of Grey, getting down to number 9. Okay, you know something that's really interesting that I heard about her. This is I don't even remember the lady's name. Her mom. Her mom.
Dakota. Oh, her mom. Her mom is Melanie
Griffin.
Oh,
Yeah. And
her real life
yeah.
mom?
Yeah.
So I saw an interview where she talked about taking this part, and her mom heavily encouraged her not to take this part. She took it anyway. Do you know she went home from the set crying every single day?
You could
Wow.
see her in
Crying.
interviews. She's just,
Literally just like this was the worst
Because it was disturbing. I don't know anything
disturbing.
about it.
Yeah, it's like taking sexuality, which should be the epitome of pleasure and love towards somebody else, and then adding like sadistic abuse to it, and it's just a bad combination altogether. Forrest Gump was on the list.
Really?
Jenny.
That's
okay.
I didn't know those.
Here's Twilight popping up.
Wow.
I want you to notice a trend here. Woman, two guys. Okay, I want you to notice. Oh,
Two guys.
wait, that wasn't the one that she was first with, right?
Oh yeah, I remember.
So
Well,
then
one of
it's
them was a
like,
werewolf and one was a vampire.
okay,
You
well,
know more than me.
anyway,
Choose your pick.
That's a tough choice.
yeah,
I know.
They're both like beasts.
yeah. But this is once again taking the idea of lust on a spectrum of love is the opposite of love. Lust is I want to take something from you. Love is I want to give something to you. So this whole series is really a twisting of what it's calling. It's like what the devil does. He entices us into sin, and he claims, I'm going to make you free. You can have freedom doing this, but what he's really doing is enslaving you. This is the same type of operation. It's not love, it's lust, and it's on the other side of the spectrum, this entire story. But these were on the tops of the story.
I've never seen these. Like, I've seen this one.
This was
Hated
surprising
it.
to me. This was surprising to me. Do you know that this story of Aladdin made $1 billion? Do you know why that's significant?
Oh, serious?
Wow.
How much did the cartoon make?
$1 billion. I have no
Oh,
idea.
I
But
thought
this one story wasn't released that long ago. This is 2019. And in this one, Jasmine here says, I don't want to follow the rules anymore. And there is some law that she has to marry somebody. And he's like, basically like, hey, I can make this law go away. I can just snap my fingers and it'll just go away. That is not a picture of love. Love is built on rules and laws. And when you throw out the rules, there is literally no end what the devil can cause harm in this.
Right.
Beauty and the Beast.
I saw that one.
Number 2.
Wow.
I'm
What?
really
Do you think is number 1? Number 1?
The Notebook, right?
Or the Titanic.
I don't. Is this
Oh,
movies
that's a good
from
one.
the? Well, no, because the first one was like 90s.
Number 1.
Titanic.
Titanic. And if you watch this one, Do you remember that was kind of messed up?
Yeah.
Oh
Wasn't
yeah.
She
she
was
like
supposed
engaged
to
to
be
one
in,
guy?
It's like Aladdin.
in an engagement with somebody else and falls in
Yeah.
love with another guy.
Yeah.
And the fiance is always some terrible guy.
But he has lots of money.
Right. So you're
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
inclined
So they
to hate
justify the cheating.
him. Yeah.
So once again, out of this list of the top 20 highest grossing films, do you see any clear picture of what a real marriage should look like, what real love should look like?
Well, you hardly see marriage at all. It's really just
There's a lot of twisted
That's a
concepts.
good point.
yeah.
in
There's
a
they
lot of
never
these.
get married. They just have
They're not
sex, and
getting
then it's
married.
like you never even really hear them say boyfriend or girlfriend. You're just once you sleep together, that births love, and then you just are together.
Yep. I can remember being in high school. I think I was in high school when this movie came out. And I mean, I went to the theater. I saw it. There was this crazy sex scene in there. I mean, I was not married or anything yet. You know what I mean?
He was like
So-
real interested in that.
I watched it 3 times.
Taking out the sexual part of it, that's interesting. Like none of these, I'm not sure, most of them are not between like a married couple and then she like steps out. So do these rules that you're talking about, do they apply since it wasn't a marriage? Like just because you're engaged to someone or you're dating someone, are you locked in? Can you not go and see what else is out there?
I
There's
think,
no
Devil's
commitment.
advocate, by
I
the way.
think in a majority of these movies they had sex.
Okay, well, taking that out. I'm just saying.
Well, then, pretty much the movies don't exist then if you take that part
I
out.
would say, I would
Take that
say
out.
yes though, because there is no commitment.
Okay.
So I mean, if we believe as Christians that, well, you said take out the sex part, but let's say that's only for marriage. But then if you're in a relationship with someone and like you have no commitment, or there is no solid foundation for relationships, you can do whatever you want because they don't really belong to you.
Mhm.
You know, you just it's like you have all the benefits of the relationship, but you never made that commitment, so you can just leave.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm surprised The Notebook is not on this list.
And
That was, like,
Dirty
a
Dancing,
hugely-
like,
I thought The
wow.
Notebook was like a super depressing movie. Did anybody else have that? I mean, I almost got stoned for saying such a thing, but
Yep.
here's why. For one, and it was one of the movies where both the guys were actually good guys. It was a love triangle, and the other, anyway, there were 2 good guys.
Oh yeah.
But the thing that was super depressing, and this is a spoiler alert if you haven't seen it and you want to, in the end, when they both die, it seemed like a symbiotic relationship, like there was nothing deeper than the romance. They were living for each other, and it was such a hollow ending, like, without God, your whole existence is wrapped up in this person. When they're gone, you're just over. And it just seemed like this depressing, what was the point of your life except just to be married? And that's what it ended on. And people were like, what's the matter with you? That's the best movie. I'm like, I was in depression after that.
Wow.
You bring up a really great point, and I want to bring up a couple of verses because I think it speaks to what you just said right there. Hebrews 13:4 says, "Let the marriage be held in honor among them all. Let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous." Okay? So we're all in danger of a pretty harsh judgment there, it says, if we are literally living outside of what God is asking for us to do. So I find it very alarming to me that our pop culture, our modern media is pumping out this idea, just sleep with whoever you want. And this is a pretty straightforward verse. You know, it speaks pretty clearly right here. But from what you just said right there, Ecclesiastes 4:12, "And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not easily broken." I really want to end this conversation with, I believe that God foresaw that sin was going to be at our door. That's why I believe he put man with a woman. He said, it's not good for you to be alone. Why would it not be good for you to be in a perfect environment? Why would that not be good? He created a perfect environment. He said it's not good for you to be alone. And, when Adam and Eve, and this is maybe debatable, when Eve walked away from Adam in the garden, is typically how we read that, that the devil was able to communicate with her. But if the 2 would have been there, maybe it would have been a different story. And so I honestly believe that us together in a marriage situation is a stronger cord against the devil's attacks. But if we add that third string, that third cord, then we will be not easily broken.
I don't want to regress, but
Is this about the notebook? I'm just
she made an interesting point, and I just want to make an observation about how cultures are different. In America, we're really raised with this idea, and I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong, that, you know, if it's not the right one, you shouldn't go through with it. You know, it's not final. I mean, do what makes you happy, really, and you know, break that thing off. And I do believe that people should not get into bad relationships. In other cultures, though, and I'm thinking specifically of the Jewish culture, once like those people were essentially engaged or promised to each other, or this is the one you're going to marry, it's a different story. It's not the same culturally. That was like, at that point, you were essentially considered married.
But you couldn't live together?
There was no like just deciding, you know, this isn't a good idea, we don't want to do this. That was like, at that point, if you walk away, you're breaking that contract. You're now breaking covenant.
That's why when Mary came up pregnant, it hurt Joseph.
It was
pretty
kind
bad.
of a big deal.
Yeah.
So in this country, though, we have more flexible ideas about that, because it's just cultures change. We're different, you know, and as society progresses, whichever direction it's going, that's kind of what we've adopted.
And we're untrustworthy.
Again, I'm not advocating for, you know, stay in a bad relationship, but we are looking at it through a different lens. Whereas in here, a lot of those movies, it's like, yeah, you know, don't go through with it. It was the wrong idea. You know, it's more easily disposable. But other cultures and times wouldn't necessarily look at it that way. If you were promised to somebody, that was like, it was a done deal. And breaking that off was a much bigger deal.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's been awesome. Great conversation. Thank you for sharing your input. Hopefully, we all were edified by today's conversation. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching today. I hope that you hear some of these statistics that, you know, the holiday season is a great time for us to get together in families and spend time together. But, you know, a lot of people feel strained during that time. And I believe that the devil is out to attack our marriages. I can't tell you how many people I have around me that are constantly talking about their marriage problems, or that there is something that is just attacking, or their marriages are falling apart. So I just want to make a special appeal to you guys. You know, we are living in the last days, and the devil wants to divide and conquer us, and he wants to take us out. And, you know, if you are in a marriage or a covenant relationship, I just want to pray that you will listen to some of the advice, the things that have come out in this conversation. Spend time with your spouse. Make God your central focus in your relationship, your third string, your third chord, that you will not be easily broken by the devil. And definitely pray for your marriage. Pray with your spouse all the time. I believe it makes an absolute difference in your marriage. I know when I really started taking that seriously and actually praying with my spouse, it really did make a massive difference, even just in our relationship. So I want to encourage all of you guys as we come into the new year. We hope and pray that you will make God a big part of your life. And we thank you for watching LED. We thank you for supporting us. It's been an awesome year. You guys have just gone above and beyond. If you want to leave a comment for us, we read all those comments. If you have a question, we take all those questions seriously, and we will engage with you. So we thank you guys for watching. We hope you had a wonderful 2021, and we hope that you even have a better 2022. And we know we're getting that much closer to Jesus coming back. So thank you for watching. Have a great year. We'll see you guys next year.